Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My name is Caroline, and thank you for listening. If you are a new subscriber or new listener, welcome to the fam. If you're a visiting listener, thank you for your support. I am back with another episode, and this time I want to talk about the different ways that I do to lower my cortisol levels. And I think lowering my cortisol levels have been life-changing in my life. It obviously reduces my stress, and it makes me just constantly being in a state of not relaxation but at peace, right? Even if I'm having a very productive day, I am hustling and bustling, I still feel like I am at peace, and I am able to manage my stress levels and know when I need to prioritize resting more and when I can let myself, work a bit more and then work, overtime, things like that. So being aware of these different ways that I do to lower my cortisol levels raises my awareness and consciousness, especially when I'm moving around and solving things, going about my day. So I thought I would do an episode giving my tips and tricks to hopefully help you manage your own cortisol levels and then eventually reducing your stress levels. Especially as a woman, I feel like we are particularly more sensitive, especially when we're stressed. And whenever we're extra stressed or we're burnt out, I feel like life just does not feel as fun and as enjoyable. And like the last episode that I mentioned with being in your feminine energy, so cortisol levels, they kind of go hand in hand with, being in your feminine energy and things like that. And you're going to hear that point coming up in a few couple of minutes. But yes, I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you need more tips or you have your own tips and tricks, just let me know. But the first tip or the first thing that I did when I first started out on my journey of lowering my cortisol levels was I completely cut on my caffeine or coffee consumption. I still allow myself a cup of coffee or a cup of matcha or tea, things like that from time to time. But especially coffee, I don't drink coffee anymore. And that was because I noticed a year and a half ago when I was just, drinking coffee every single day and even multiple cups, because I don't know about you, but the way coffee is made in the United States is very different from how it is made in Vietnam. And I feel like, personally speaking, Vietnamese coffee is very much stronger than American or US coffee. Because of that, when I first arrived in the US and starting my study abroad journey, I moving from a place or a country where you're used to that strong caffeine, to me American coffee is not enough. That's why I need to drink multiple cups of coffee every single day. And I even asked for extra shots of espresso, things like that, but they didn't do anything for me in terms of helping me wake up, things like that. And so eventually, over time, you can see where I'm going with this. Over time, I get addicted in a sense to coffee, and I feel like without coffee I could not concentrate, I could not function, and I feel like my just awareness and consciousness wasn't as good as when I would have at least one cup of coffee before that. So that was starting to become a big problem, and I noticed that. And I also had a very bad habit of not eating breakfast, and but then I would drink a cup of coffee, and that messed up my digestive tract, my gut, everything, and I would have very, very bad cramps. And I know now that's because of drinking coffee before eating breakfast and drinking coffee on an empty stomach. So I don't do coffee anymore, or at least I don't do coffee before breakfast. That's a rule that I would never break, because having those cramps were horrible, and I just did not like that feeling at all. So I don't do coffee anymore. If I want to opt for a pick-me-up or a caffeine shot, I would do either matcha or green tea or just different types of tea. But I feel like when you're not relying on caffeine to run you throughout the day, you will kind of grow used to being able to function normally without caffeine. Because same thing, if you are used to needing coffee before you can start functioning, then your body will start adapting to it, and then your body would not be able to function without caffeine. So if you reverse the logic, now that you don't need caffeine, coffee, matcha, green tea, whatever, your body also will start to adapt to that, and it would not need caffeine to run itself, if that makes sense. So that's the switch that I noticed even at the beginning. So I went from not drinking coffee to drinking coffee every single day, and I could feel my body changing and adapting to the caffeine or the caffeine consumption. And then afterward, when I went off of coffee and caffeine in general, I could see and I could feel my body switching back to adjust to that previous lifestyle that I had. Obviously, the first couple of weeks of cutting off coffee or being off of caffeine was horrible, because I feel like I could not concentrate. My energy level was like crap. I could not do anything, could not function. But just give it a bit of a period, a week or so, and then you would start to feel your body kind of adjusting. So when I was feeling like I could not function, I would take a nap, or I would do something else that would require my body to wake up. For example, I would go work out, go on a walk, whatever. Food as well, eating also helps with energy levels, because it's basically you providing your body with glucose, which is another substitute for energy and kind of waking your body up. So I did that. And so I feel like now I don't do coffee anymore, and I feel like I am able to function pretty well even off of caffeine. But if you do need to, or you do feel like you need coffee, at least don't do it on an empty stomach. Eat breakfast, and I know that there's a rule going around that you drink coffee and then you wait 90 minutes at least before you drink coffee. But I would suggest that you opt for either a matcha or green tea, because I just feel like that's a bit of a more healthier alternative to coffee and in general. So that's the first tip that I have for you, and doing that tremendously lowered my cortisol levels, because what caffeine does, I'm just kind of paraphrasing that, and I don't memorize specific statistic, but if you want to go look on the internet, I believe I've read a research saying how cortisol, or no, not cortisol, caffeine wakes your body up. And what it does is that it wakes your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight system that we always hear about on the internet. And so the sympathetic nervous system also is correlated to stress management, because it's correlated to responses in terms of danger and fight or flight. So it stresses you out basically, and it also what it also does is that it wakes you up, because when you're stressed, you're going to be hyper aware and hyper sensitive. That's what it does. So once I cut coffee, I don't rely on that, and my sympathetic nervous system is not always like hypersensitive anymore. So that's the first tip. The second tip that I did was I set a rule to myself that I would not work before I get ready for the day, and I would not work after 9 p.m. at night. So before 9 a.m. approximately, and after 9 p.m. are my resting time, either my getting ready for the daytime or my unwinding and calling it a night time. So I do not work. I don't check my emails. If something comes up, I don't do anything. I would leave it for tomorrow, or at least after I get ready. And that's when I would, work, check my emails, run the deadlines, whatever plan. So those times are solely for myself, and I would if it's getting ready, I would put on a good podcast, do my makeup, get dressed, eat my breakfast. If it's after 9 p.m., I would, take a shower, do my skincare, winding down, things like that. So I feel like it's very important to have a specific time blocks for you, both in the morning and both at night, that when it's that time, you don't do anything and you prioritize resting, because what it does is that it tells your body that I deserve to rest. And resting is just as important as working. And there are certain specific time blocks where your body know that you're not going to be working, so it's not going to be stressed out. Because imagine this, if you are, getting ready and then something comes up and you're constantly checking your email and then getting ready and then, moving back and forth, jumping back and forth, you're going to be very stressed out, and you're going to be feeling like you have to rush through your getting ready routine to be able to handle that thing that comes up. Same thing after 9 p.m. or after your work day is over. When you're taking a shower and then emails comes up and then you're kind of reading that email and you're being notified of, oh, this is the deadline that's coming up, or this is something that you need to do, things like that, you're going to be very stressed out and you're not going to be able to focus on resting. But instead, your mind is going to be split into two or split into multiple parts of resting and then working, resting, working, and you're not going to be able to be in the present. And being in the present is very important if you want to lower your cortisol levels. And I feel like just resting in general, like I mentioned, when you rest, your parasympathetic system is activated and it constricts your pupil, it constricts your bronchi, which is your lungs. It, sends blood to your digestive system to help you digest the food that you just ate. And then it slows down your heart rate so you're not as stressed, things like that. So it does all that functions. But if you are, working and then you're brushing your teeth, you're showering, and the notifications come up, your parasympathetic system is not going to be fully activated. Instead, your sympathetic system will be activated. And like I mentioned, sympathetic system, fight or flight. So you're not going to be able to rest and then relax for the day. And that also affects my sleep schedule as well. I always notice that when I used to do that, when I used to, work and then check my emails after 9 p.m., I would not be able to sleep because my mind is so active and my body is very active that I could not physically relax and prepare for sleep. So if you're somebody like me who struggles with sleeping already, I find it very hard for me to sleep and relax at night. So not working after 9 p.m. helps tremendously for me. Also, another point that I do have with this is that it's not always about the resting that matters. It's also about the mindset that comes with you setting a boundary for yourself that I do not work after 9 p.m. or I do not work before 9 a.m. Because what it does is that it tells your body that I deserve to rest and I deserve to take care of myself, even if I don't, do this certain thing, or I forget to complete this task, or I still have notifications coming up. So that's such a powerful affirmation that you can do for yourself, is that telling your subconscious mind that I deserve to rest even if things are not going exactly how I wanted. And also that also affects the attitude with which you move about your day, because for me personally, if I am able to dedicate a specific chunk of time to fully get ready and to fully wake me up gradually instead of like that, I feel more powerful and I feel more ready to work once I'm ready. But if you're constantly working throughout the day, you're constantly not being in your present moment, it's like your mind is always working, but it's only half working, if that makes sense. But if you are, not working before 9 a.m., after 9 a.m., your mind's going to be like, right, this is the time that we need to work. we have had our resting time. Now is the time to fire up and be productive. So that's the effect that having this boundary set have on me. And I feel like I'm able to work more productively. I'm able to be more ready and be 100% focused on my work if I allow myself time to get ready and unwind before and after my workday schedule. So that's the second thing that I did to lower my cortisol levels. The third thing that I did was don't let work consume your life. Taking a break in between. So this is kind of going off of the second point, but once you have that kind of routine set in place of, in the morning, I have your morning routine. In the evening, you have your evening routine. And those are your resting times already. But also throughout the day, you also need to have small breaks from work because, like I mentioned, you cannot... I feel like our mind can only focus for a certain amount of time. Like for me, 2 hours, that's the amount that I could 100% focus on my work. If it goes longer than 2 hours, I start to drift off. I start to not be as focused. And that's when I know I should take a break. That's when the Pomodoro technique comes into place. If you don't know, the Pomodoro technique is when you study or you work for a certain amount of time for, let's say, 45 minutes, and then you take a 15 minutes break, and then you do 45 minutes, and then you take a 15-minute break. So it's like dividing your work schedule into chunks of work, but also resting, so that your mind and your body will be able to rest and not kind of be burnt out. That makes sense. So for me, what I do is obviously I take breaks in between of my sessions, but I also go to the gym. I take a break from working entirely for the rest of the 1 or 2 hours. When I go to the gym, I don't check my emails. I turn on the do not disturb, whatever. I put on the good playlist, and I just move my body, because one thing about working for the entire day, you're just sitting at one place most of the time, and your body's gonna be very stagnant, and you're gonna have back problem if you do that for a very long time, things like that. So taking a break from work to go to the gym, go on a walk, and kind of refreshes your body really helps me. And that's just a way to take care of yourself as well. So yeah, take a break from working. But also one point on, if you're a woman and you're dealing with your cycles and everything, one rule, it's kind of a rule, but one thing that I don't do on my period is that I don't work out, or I don't do high intensity workout. I usually prioritize resting, meaning doing nothing, or I would do yoga or Pilates that are focused on resting and stretching instead of, building muscle, things like that. And I know that you have heard of this concept before, but that's called cycle syncing. Because we women, we are not always productive. We're not always feeling our best, especially if you're menstruating or you're in your luteal phase. Your hormones are kind of messing around, so you're not going to be able to feel 100%. So being able to be very patient with yourself, especially when you're menstruating, and syncing your work and your workout routine, your diet, everything according to your cycle really helps me lower my cortisol level, because you don't want to do, a HIIT workout when you're on your period. You don't want to weight lift on your period. That's going to stress your body out. It's very much because, when you're weightlifting, that shot up dopamine. It can be good if you're in your ovulatory phase, because that's when you feel the best. But if you're weightlifting during your period, it's just gonna stress you out, and that dopamine's not gonna feel the same. So I'm just starting to do this, but cycle syncing have been helping a lot, and it also kind of eliminates the stigma that I have surrounding working out, and the need that I feel I always have to work out to be able to love myself, and resting and telling my body that I don't need to work out all the time, and things, especially on my period, reaffirms this notion that I am good enough for myself. And it's a very good feeling of not feeling guilty anymore even if you don't work out, and even if you don't feel like you don't work out hard enough, things like that. So that really helps. Once again, coming back to the second point of mindset and then taking breaks. The fourth thing that I did was I make sure to plan everything out beforehand. I use a bunch of different apps to help me manage my day a lot better, to make sure that I don't have any sudden deadlines coming up that I'm not aware of, because that can spike up my cortisol levels. So I use a calendar to make things easier to manage, and I create to-do lists and things like that. So there are 2 apps or 3 apps that I do use to, help me manage my day-to-day. So I use Notion calendar, I think, to put in big events, and also time blocking. So I would say, this from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I would go to school, things like that. And I would time block in every courses I do, every events that I have, every kind of deadlines that I have. But I also plan in my workout and my rest time as well, because that can help me visualize different time blocks that I have, available, and planning in my rest time and my workout time just make things more official for me, and that also motivates me to want to work out and to want to rest. So that's a tip that I have. The other app that I use is I think it's GoodNotes on my iPad. I use it on a digital planner that I downloaded on TikTok or whatever, and I use that specifically for to-do lists and everyday activities. So like I mentioned, planning out my day in advance, and then because I also like the feeling of ticking off my to-do lists, so I would use the Notion calendar for bigger events like weekly events and also monthly events. But when it comes to day-to-day to-do lists, I would use the GoodNotes app. And then I also use Google Calendar, but it's only for events that I have with other people. So because Notion Calendar and Google Calendar are synced and they're kind of linked together, so when you update your events on one, the other will automatically update as well. So that saves time, because I feel like not everybody uses Notion calendar. So, it saves time that those two are kind of syncing together. So I really like that. But planning everything out beforehand, I don't like to cram things. I don't like to, procrastinate and leave things to the last minute. That stresses me out a lot. But if you're a person that works very well under pressure, that might work for me, but it doesn't work for me. So I like to divide things up beforehand, and I would like to complete smaller chunks of the task, throughout the week, so that I can submit it and I can make sure that I don't have to cram everything in one day or 1 hour. That's not gonna do well for my cortisol levels. So planning things beforehand really helps. That's 4th tip. And then the last tip that I have includes some practices that I do throughout the day to help lower my cortisol levels, because sometimes things are not going as planned, and you're gonna have a day that you feel particularly busy and things are just not going well. So what I would do is I would do breathing exercises throughout the day. So box breathing, meaning you breathe in for 4 seconds, and then you hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then you breathe out for 4 seconds, and then you hold your breath for 4 seconds. That's called box breathing, and that really helps calms me down. So I learned about this method when I was seeing my therapist, and I was struggling with anxiety, especially social anxiety, and she would tell me, you would do this. And also, if you're somebody who struggles with anxiety, another thing that I do is pay attention to your 5 senses. So whenever you feel like you're being anxious, I would focus on what I can see, what I can hear, what I can touch, what I can smell, and what I can taste. So being aware of my senses really helps grounds me and kind of drags me back to the present moment. So that's what I do, and that really helps. So throughout the day, whenever I feel like I'm kind of beginning to stress out, I would do breathing exercises. Also, another thing is I would do yoga before bed. that really helps as well, especially if the yoga videos that you choose are focused on stretching and releasing and kind of relaxing. That really helps. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to buy a subscription for yoga. There's a bunch of YouTube videos that are free on YouTube that you can do. Yoga before bed, yoga in bed, things like that. It really helps. And then drinking tea helps as well. I need to start drinking more tea. I just feel like I don't have the time to do that, so I need to be better at that. But I've heard people saying that drinking tea, especially there's specific types of tea that can be used for releasing stress and just helping you relax. That's good. But also nutrition also plays a role. I think personally for me, whenever I eat something that does not feel good, like processed food, a lot of fried food, a lot of oil, my body does not feel good. But whenever I eat a very nutritious meal, a very balanced meal, like protein, vegetables, especially in fruits, I feel amazing, and that instantly uplifts my mood. So nutrition also plays a role. If you notice that you're somebody that doesn't feel very good after eating a big, fried meal, processed meal, like fast food, whatever, that can also play a role in managing your cortisol levels as well. Yeah, last thing is cycle syncing. That's another practice that I do, but I already mentioned that. So those are the things that I do to help manage my cortisol levels. In the beginning, doing these practices did help lower my cortisol levels. But since I feel like I've been doing these practices for a while now, they can only be used to kind of manage my cortisol levels. And obviously, even if you do all of those things like I mentioned, there are going to be some days that you feel like your stress is just out of hand and you cannot manage it, or you cannot, it's feeling pretty anxious. That is normal. These practices are not going to be like guarantee every time to help you manage cortisol levels, but for me overall, most of the time they really help, and they kind of improve my overall quality of life. And obviously there are going to be times that the stress is just getting pretty out of hand, and that's normal. So be patient with yourself. And like I mentioned, cortisol levels and just stress in general can also be tied back to feminine and masculine energy, especially if you're a woman. I feel like whenever I'm in my feminine energy, my cortisol levels are instantly manageable and pretty low compared to whenever I'm in my masculine energy. So, if you want to go back to the previous episode that I mentioned about feminine and masculine energy, and then if you want to do extra research, on YouTube or on TikTok, there's a bunch of videos on that. And I feel like I've heard quite a lot of people saying how feminine energy can be correlated to cortisol levels and stress levels in general. So that could be a pretty good topic to dive into. I could make an episode later to, help you draw a better of a link between these two topics, but that's gonna be for another episode. But I hope you enjoy listening to me talking about different ways that I do to lower my cortisol levels. And if you find this helpful, subscribe, leave a comment. If you have other tips that you want to share, let me know. And thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you find this very helpful. And I will see you very soon with another episode. And until then, bye-bye.